Hola, amiga. Welcome to the Latina Leadership Podcast, a podcast by Latinas for all women. Get ready because today's conversation is really special. Hola, amigas, and welcome back to the Latina Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Andrea Diaz, and this is the first episode of 2026, so Happy New Year, y'all. And let's get into it. So, I was on the phone with my best friend the other day, and she was telling me about this idea she has. You know, she wants to start selling these beautiful hand-painted figurines online. You know, she's an artist. So she got the designs, she looked at the shipping costs, and she even thought of a name for the business. But then she just stopped. And she said, I can't even tell my mom about it. She'll just ask me why I don't want to use my degree. She'll think it's a waste. And that stuck with me. It wasn't about the business plan. It was about the conversation she was already having in her head, a conversation that hasn't even happened yet. And it's like the idea of the business itself was just the surface. And underneath was this whole other world of feelings, history, and expectations. And that's what today is about. We're calling this episode The Business of Us. And I don't just mean a Latina-owned business. I mean the business of navigating what we want to build with the stories we carry about what we should build. It's a space where a business collides with family history and where success has to be measured in more than just profit. And we have a perfect story for this from a listener named Vanessa. Her journey isn't just about starting companies, it's about the internal navigation system. And I want you to hear it in her own words first. Vanessa is Peruvian American, just a little background about her, and grew up in Utah. And her story starts with a feeling I think a lot of us recognize. My name is Vanessa Clavijo. I'm Peruvian and came to the US as a child. My life has always been shaped by two worlds, holding tight to my Latina roots while growing up fully immersed in American culture and in Utah. Like all daughters of immigrants, I carried the unspoken duty of making my parents proud. Stepping into entrepreneurship was the first time I chose something entirely on my own. It was complete unknown territory for me, and a little scary for my parents to watch. Navigating this journey without examples of other female leaders around me that reflected my upbringing made it feel even lonelier at times. I often struggled to relate to non-Latina entrepreneurs because our foundations were simply different. Still, I built my own path. I jumped off the deep end and by going to work for Disney Cruise Line at 18 and continued my journey of an atypical life throughout my 20s. Today, I own a pet photography studio that I've grown for the past 3 years, as well as a service organization I started this year. 6 months ago, Girls Do the Work began a volunteer group of women who meet monthly to work on service projects together. In a short time, it became a powerful reminder of what I've always believed. Women have so much to give. All we need is opportunity and the space to show it. That phrase she used, our foundations were simply different. It's so simple, but it's everything. It's the starting line for a completely different race. And we asked her to tell us more about what that foundation felt like. And our first question was, when you stepped into entrepreneurship, your parents saw it as unknown territory. Can you tell us about a specific moment you had to navigate their concerns, and what did you learn? And here's what she said. Long before I stepped into entrepreneurship, I always had a mind of my own, like going to work on a cruise ship, having countless temporary jobs to explore, different types of jobs, and being more artsy than textbook driven. I was never business minded growing up. However, once I really found something I 1000% believed in, it truly was the first time I chose something entirely on my own. Before that, most of my life choices were guided by a very clear framework my parents believed in college, certain majors, stable jobs, and doing things in a safe order. And I completely understand why, at least now, and they were trying to protect me. My parents' concern usually showed up as practicality, especially when I would quit day jobs. Their first response was often fear-based, as they encouraged me to do things the safer way, just in case. So support always came after, but usually after I stood my ground. More recently, I realized their fear was never about doubting my ability, but about security. They sacrificed everything to come to this country, experienced job instability, language barriers, and uncertainty, all so I could have a safe and stable life. So watching me willingly leave a senior level corporate role felt to them like risking everything they worked for. Understanding that reframed everything for me. Choosing myself felt emotionally lonely at times. I was my own cheerleader to my ideas, and growing up in a very critical household meant self-doubt came easily. Over time, though, choosing myself also brought more honesty, trust, and respect into our family dynamic. That whole last part, understanding that reframed everything for me, it's a key shift. Vanessa isn't just dismissing her parents' worry, she's understanding its origin. It makes me think of a concept from research we touched on in a past episode, allostatic load. That's the cumulative wear and tear on the body from chronic stress. And for immigrant parents, that load is often tied to economic precarity and systemic instability. Their push for a safe job isn't about limiting dreams. It's a hard-earned strategy for reducing that load for the next generation. And when Vanessa chose a different path, it might have felt to them like voluntary picking that way back up. Her reframing was her way of saying, I see your burden, and I'm building something strong enough to carry it forward differently. And then we asked the next question. You mentioned struggling to relate to non-Latina entrepreneurs because your foundations were different. What is one value or perspective from your culture that became a strength in business? And here is Vanessa's full answer. When I say my foundations felt different, I think about the risk my family took in moving to a new country and starting completely over. Starting over in a new country shaped my entire relationship with risk. Many entrepreneurs talk about trusting the process, but for daughters of immigrants, that trust often comes with a lot more weight. Responsibility to family, to sacrifice, to giving back, it all lives alongside our dreams. My mom was a single mom who worked entry-level jobs because her education from Peru wasn't recognized here and her English wasn't perfect. A huge part of my drive came from wanting to make her proud and to some days give back to her, and that made any risk feel heavier. Failing didn't just feel personal, it would feel like letting my family down. That quote, that right there is a different economic and emotional calculus. And mainstream entrepreneurship often celebrates the fail fast mentality. But for many of us, the social and emotional cost of failure is amplified. This connects to what we discussed in our episode on Angela's story, the idea of social capital and family capital. Our drive is deeply embedded in family networks and obligations. This heavier trust Vanessa describes affects everything from the type of business we start to how we grow it, often prioritizing stability and collective reputation over rapid, risky scaling. It's not a lack of ambition, it's a different kind of responsibility. Finally, we ask about girls do the work. It's such a beautiful mission, so how did this work connect back to your upbringing and the lessons from your family? And here's Vanessa's full answer. I never believed in waiting until I was successful enough to help others. Even when I had very little, I felt called to give back with whatever time I had. That belief later became the foundation to Girls Do the Work. Culturally, I was quiet in my career because I was always aware of who I represented, but also more resilient. Growing up Latina means critique is direct, and that gave me thick skin in professional spaces. When I started Girls Do the Work in a mostly white state, I moved slowly at first, unsure who would follow me as a minority leader. What surprised me was how many Latinas showed up once I trusted my internal compass. Growing up, I saw women serve very quietly by coordinating childcare, giving rides, making extra food, helping each other survive. Service wasn't formal, it was relational. What pulled me early on, though, was the world outside my inner circle. I started volunteering when I was 11, first at an animal shelter, then in assisting living homes. I was deeply affected by those vulnerable outside my bubble. I was never pressured to be the strong one, since I was the youngest, and that might have made me extremely emotionally sensitive. Anything outside my world stayed with me. For most of my life, I served alone or with random groups. I loved the work, but I was lonely. Girls Do the Work mirrors the service I grew up with, but repairs what was missing for me: connection. I see community itself as part of the service. The friendships formed while serving matter just as much as the project itself. This work is both giving back and creating what I wish existed earlier. I can give back in a much bigger way now because there are more hands involved, and at the same, honoring the younger version of myself who felt weird or uncool for caring so much about volunteering. Her quote, "I see community itself as part of the service." This quote is, to me, the core of the Latina entrepreneurial blueprint. Vanessa's pet photography business is her enterprise, but Girls Do the Work is her ecosystem. She's not building a solo venture, she's building a network. And this reflects a powerful finding from the field of community psychology, psychology again, about collective efficacy, the ability of a community to come together to achieve common goals. And she's channeling the relational support she witnessed into a structured form of collective action. Her business success and her community work aren't separate tracks. They fuel each other, and the business provides resources and a platform, and the community work provides a purpose, a trusted network, and a feedback loop that keeps the work grounded. It's a direct, beautiful application of the protective factors we discussed in our resilience episode, and she built her own support system to buffer against the isolation of entrepreneurship. So, what do we take from Vanessa's map? If our foundations are different, maybe our toolkits are too. First, it's okay to acknowledge the story you're stepping into. Before you even pitch your idea to your family, get curious. What's the family narrative about work insecurity? Is it a story of survival, of outsmarting the system, of constant hustle? Understanding the story helps you see that their concerns aren't a critique of you, but a protection of the plot. You can then show them how your idea fits into or carefully rewrites that story. Second, be patient with your own mindset. That heavier trust Vanessa talked about can make every setback feel huge. You might need to consciously practice what psychologists call self-compassion. So talk to yourself like you talk to a friend in your situation. Would you tell them they're a failure for one mistake, or would you remind them it's part of learning? We have to give ourselves permission to learn, not just to succeed instantly. And finally, consider who your business brings along. Vanessa's model shows that the venture and the community don't have to be separate. Who does your idea help, include, or create space for? Thinking about that from the beginning doesn't dilute your business. It gives it the roots and a reason to keep going on in the hard days. It turns your work into a protective factor for others too. When I asked Vanessa to give us advice to give to y'all, Vanessa left us with the last piece of advice for anyone on the edge of starting. She said, "Fear doesn't mean you're wrong. It usually means you're doing something without a map. You don't have to reject your culture to choose yourself. You're allowed to honor where you come from while still building something new, and you don't have to do it alone." So maybe the old maps don't show the terrain we're walking now. Maybe we're drawing new ones where success includes security and purpose, individuality and community, and making our families proud and staying true to a vision they might not recognize at first. And that's the business of us. It's complicated and heavy and really, really beautiful. So thank you, Vanessa, for sharing your map with us. To everyone listening, your foundation, your weight, your way of building, it all matters. It's not a barrier, it's your unique material. So let's keep building. And I'm Andrea Diaz, and talk to you on the next one. Bye, amigas.